like to turn to the discipline that really makes it all happen, being this a digital device that's used in electronic medical records. I'd like to call on Debra Murphy, who's the senior IT analyst for UNC Health. And I know there are always so many competing priorities for IT. You have people knocking on your door constantly. I would like you to look at this system. I'd like you to make this enhancement to the EMR. It's probably a never-ending parade going of requests for you. And could you tell us about your experience with EndoTool at UNC Health? And I know you've been slowly adding EndoTool at a number of sites within your institution.
Yes. Normally, once management has really done the heavy lifting, that's all the decision making for the implementation. We look at our resources. We look at the scheduling of different upgrades and applications, and we prioritize. We make sure that we try to fit it in a location that there is no competition or minimal competition for needed resources, and we follow through with that. We do a lot of proactive work ahead of time once we are made aware of the desire to implement EndoTool. So it can be a challenge, but we have found that working through those processes with management and the clinical teams, that it becomes a good pattern. We have a very nice process in place. So therefore, it takes away our need of being stretched for resources doing different parts of the implementation. So resources is the main thing, and prioritizing is the other.
And have you had to make the case to other IT colleagues that yes, we need to do this expansion at this hospital within this time period, or is that driven elsewhere within the system?
It's driven more from an operational perspective, especially when we are onboarding and expanding, be it a unit or to a new site. So those regulations and those protocol is more or less put in place for us. We just follow once all the decision making has been made, more from a clinical and operational aspect.
And have you ever had to request additional resources for implementation, given that there's always so many people requesting additional applications to be installed? Have you, when upper management has said, well, yeah, make this a priority, we need a glycemic management system installed in this hospital, and your answer is yes, but I need additional resources. Have you had to make the case for that?
Yes, and it's normally from an operational perspective, which has already made decision that EndoTool needs to be a part of. So our lifting of resources becomes minimal because that has been factored into the prioritization part of it. That means that we've looked at, yes, we need resources based on, we have a go live date that's in scope, and there's building that needs to be completed. So therefore, the lifting for more resources is minimal impact. We have very little pushback, if any.
And how challenging is the IT implementation of EndoTool?
Because of all the proactive work that we put into place before we do an implementation, that's knowing all the clinical decision making has been decided upon from the operation and the clinical sides. That's your medical educators, that's your diabetic educators. So from a clinical aspect, it makes the technical aspect very, 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 I'm not going to say minimal, but it takes a lot of the decision making away from us. We follow what has been. It's more or less the building of the system from the technical side once all of the operational decisions have been made.
I'm curious to open it up to the other panelists. Have you involved roadblocks with IT to get a system like this implemented? Because we hear that frequently, that again, there's competing priorities with the IT department, and it's something needs to get pushed back. If you all had to make more of a case with your IT departments to launch this application? Dr. Chenard?
I would say that we did experience that. In fact, we're kind of experiencing that as we are working on this rollout for the entire health system. One of the things that we have had to kind of work within a calendar is what other devices are coming out that our nurses are going to be really invested in. Like we're having to do a complete overhaul of our IV pumps currently. And so making sure that whatever we do that requires a lot of nursing involvement, we are on the right calendar. And so there is some IT involved with our infusion pumps upgrade. There's IT involved with EndoTool, and so making sure that we get on the right spot in the calendar so that we have all the resources we need for education and build on the back end for IT, as well as all of the coordination it takes, because one of the challenges that we've come across as we go to roll this out is that there are two different perspectives. There's the IT perspective, where we're going from just having it in one unit, which is our CSICU, to having it across the health system. And the initial perception that that some of our folks had in the IT department was that it would be, you know, very quick and easy. We're just here to flip a switch. And I think that that's a great perspective from the IT folks, but we also need to have a bunch of folks from our clinical perspective who are working in to set up those processes and procedures that happen, you know, outside of our EMR and outside of EndoTool. How do we make sure that everyone knows that this is how we're progressing and that everyone is supposed to be using the same tool across the board? And how do we make sure that our nurses know how to access everything they need to use within our EMR and within EndoTool? So it's that's been a bit of our challenge with the IT rollout. It's more just a matter of getting all the right people in the same place at the same time to make sure that things go smoothly and we don't have any big hiccups after go live.
So you're able to sort of thread the needle with everyone. Scott, as the IT leader at your institution, how did you had to prioritize, and you probably maybe had to say no to some other projects, or you know, maybe delay this more than you wanted to? How did you sort of prioritize all of this?
Yeah, you know, there was initially there was a bit of resistance just because we had one hospital that was very much invested in rolling out EndoTool, and at the time we were a 2-hospital system. The other hospital was less interested, and so we've always wanted to move forward in a standardized fashion. Moving forward with one hospital kind of went against our guiding principles of standardizing our application. So that was one hurdle to get over. From an implementation perspective, you know, there is definitely an interface component, making sure that the data flowed appropriately from our electronic health record into EndoTool so that the algorithms could run, and that we definitely had to make sure we were able to prioritize our interface resources appropriately to work on establishing the interface and then testing and validating it to make sure that the data was flowing appropriately. Once that was done, that was probably one of the more complex parts of doing the rollout. Otherwise, we're an Oracle Health client, and we did have to redesign our order sets to make sure that it facilitated the initiation of EndoTool when a patient presented in DKA or with HHS. But that was a relatively easy lift for us. And then I'd say probably the most important part of the secret sauce of making it successful was, to Debra's point, having the clinical and operational buy-in and engagement to make this happen. This was definitely a project that had to be clinically led as opposed to IT led, because the knowledge base and the skill set from a clinical perspective was not something that the IT folks have the ability to validate clinically. And so we had to have the right pharmacists and the right nurses and the right providers in the room as we were doing the rollout to make sure that, yes, this is this is actually the data that we need in order for this tool to work appropriately, and we trust the advice that it's giving us. And that was key for us during the early days of our implementation. We had to have those pieces in place.
Excellent. And actually, I'll ask you, Ronna, because you were around with the implementation at your site. What's it been, about 4 years now? What was your interaction with IT? Did you have to be involved in any poking and prodding?
Yeah, actually, our IT department reached out saying, hey, what are we going to do with this EndoTool thing? And it was the partnership that we have continued, that has not decreased just because we got on the product. What we became a team in terms of what does IT need versus what does clinically need. So it was just a really nice unifying event for us to really help understand what does IT really need when we're saying we're going to add a new unit. How much time do they need, all of that. And so I kind of tried to be a support for the IT team, because I know they have all these things on their calendars. So a unit saying we're just going to open a new unit and have EndoTool, I'm like, that is not how it works. You got to think about timing and all of that. So it's really been helpful on that side, me helping IT, and then when IT gets a whim of something's going to happen clinically, they'll call me in. So it's really, really nice that we've been able to work together for so long with our IT team.